topic, which is exceptions. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, exceptions are unwanted events that disrupts your normal flow of the program. That you expected the program to give you a certain output, but it didn't, and you ended up getting some other unexpected output, right? Now, exceptional handling in Java is a mechanism that helps you handle these errors, runtime exceptions like class not found or IO or SQL or remote exception, etc., and helps you give more meaningful messages to you as a user so that you can find out or debug as to what is going wrong where, right? So that is the good part, that if you come across such events, there are ways you can handle it. How? We'll have a look. So exception handling ensures that the normal flow of the application takes place. Even if there is an exception which is thrown or something unwanted happen, there is a proper message and the program terminates normally. So how it happens is that you have an issue, you create an exception, the program throws an exception and you handle it. You write the handling code to handle such situations, right? Now, this is the exception hierarchy for us, which is, so all the errors and exceptions in Java are children of throwable class, right? They all extend from throwable class, which in turn is a child of object, as all classes in Java. Object is the parent class of all classes in Java. So error and exception, these are the two kinds. Inside exception, you further have runtime exceptions, which is index out of bounds, illegal argument, arithmetic exception, number format exception, etc. Right? And then you have IO exceptions, like file not found, socket exception, etc. And then you have certain errors, which is because of the environment your application is working in, like out of memory or a stack overflow, that you in a loop, you are continuously writing onto some stack, or that loop is not getting terminated properly, and you run out of memory, right? So these are errors that happen, okay? Now, to understand them better, let's see what is the difference between an error and an exception, and then we'll take a few examples as to what are the situations where we encounter exceptions, where exceptions are thrown. So error are all objects of java.lang.error, and exception are objects of java.lang.exception. These are two separate classes. Errors are situations where it is impossible to recover from, out of memory or a stack overflow. Exceptions are situations where a recovery and handling is possible. Okay. In cases of error, application will prefer to crash rather than handling it. Whereas in case of exceptions, through your program, you will put corrective actions and measures which can be taken in case there is an exception, right? Errors are of unchecked type, exception are of checked and unchecked both. What are checked and unchecked? We'll quickly see. Errors will happen at runtime, yes, because they are caused by the environment in which your application is running in, right? And exceptions can happen at runtime as well as compile time. And as I said, exceptions will be caused by your own application, by the code that you write, whereas error will be more to do with the application you are running in, right? Sorry, the environment you are running in. Now, some of the examples I have shared, exceptions are class cast exception, or an SQL exception, or an IO exception, right? So we'll try and cover most of these through examples, right?
So
now,
Deepti,
yeah.
One sec. Syntax errors are also errors, right?
Syntax errors are also errors. Okay, the which Eclipse highlights it for you, right?
Right, like a semicolon is missing, or if we are defining an array, then square brackets are missing. So such kinds are syntax errors,
Yeah,
right?
those are syntax errors, right? That you come to know automatically at the build time itself, like while you're writing.
So the errors that we were discussing here
No, they
are
are different.
different.
Yes, they are different. They are different. They are errors which are thrown by JVM at you, that when we are trying to run your application, such and such situation occurred and the program could not terminate properly, and it got crashed. With the term, yes,
like an infinite loop.
Yes, like an infinite loop, right? So the term can be a little confusing, but yes, these errors are different than your syntax errors. Are you clear now?
Yeah, yeah.
So checked and unchecked exceptions. Now this we need to understand very clearly. So all exceptions other than runtime exceptions are your checked exceptions, which are checked by the compiler at the compile time, right? If these exceptions are not handled or declared in the program, you will get compilation error. Like SQL exception, that you're writing an incorrect SQL, or while trying to connect to a database, there is an error that's happening. Or an IO exception. This typically happens when you're working with input-output streams. Or a class now not found exception, that you're trying to run a program and some dependent class is not available to you, right? So you'll get a compile, the error will be checked by the compiler. Now, unchecked exceptions are that occur at the time of program execution. They are also called runtime exceptions. That when I enter a value, say through scanner, I end up giving a value which is not expected, right? And I'll get an error. So number format is one exception. That it was expecting an integer value and you end up passing ABC. It will give you a runtime exception. So these are not checked by compiler. It will simply ignore such exceptions, right? It will ignore these exceptions and it will throw it, and so you will handle these exceptions in your end. How? We'll see. So this is how you handle exceptions in Java. This is the basic format before we switch to Eclipse and write an example. You will have a class exception, or say class ABC extends exception, right? And then you will have your main method. Inside that, you will have a try block. Now, what is a try block? I write code that can throw exception inside this. I know that these particular lines can result in an unwanted event, and I will try and catch it by writing this catch block immediately after my try block. And I will pass the exception object here. Now, inside this catch, either you put the most generic parent object, which is exception, or you put the more specific classes objects, like say, I want to catch an arithmetic exception here, or I want to catch a null pointer exception here. Then I will do that, and I will pass, instead of exception, that particular class, right? And then there is a finally block. We will talk more on the finally block later, but finally is no matter what, whether an exception is thrown or it is not thrown, this part of the code will always get executed. So I will write the most important code here, which no matter what, whether an exception was thrown or it was not thrown, this code gets executed. Finally block is not compulsory. You can skip it, right? It is not compulsory. But a catch block for every try is compulsory. I cannot have a try without a catch. Yes, I can have multiple catch for the same try. I want to say my code throws 3 kinds of exceptions. I'm expecting that. So I will, and I want that I should get meaningful messages for each of those exceptions. So I will put 3 catch blocks below my try, right? But 1 catch block is compulsory. Finally is not compulsory. This all will make more sense. Let's quickly get on to our first example in exceptions, and please try it out in parallel. Yeah.
Deepti,
Yes.
if code got executed on try block and it is successful, even though will it run in finally block also?
Yes, finally will get executed. Suppose that try code was all successful, catch will be skipped, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
finally will get executed.
If the code run in, if there is an error in try block and it reaches to catch, in this
Okay.
case also finally will get run, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
why we say it finally, that you finish whatever has happened and finally this part gets executed.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah. So this is my exception demo 1. What I'll do is I'll simply see what if I divide a number by 0, something we tend to do at times, right? So for now, I will do num1, num2, and num3 as my 3 integer variables. And I will go ahead and give num1 is equal to 20. And I'll do num2 is equal to 0. You can take these input parameters from the user also, no problem. I will place my try block here. The minute I place try, it says insert finally to complete try statement, or you need to insert a catch. Right. Oh, it says the exception object is missing. I will place it here, right? And then I will write my code that num3 is equal to num1 by num2. I'm trying to divide by 0 and I'm trying to print the value. And here I can do this, or I know that my exception is going to be of the type arithmetic exception, which is a child of exception class. So I'll catch the specific exception so that when the exception is thrown, I get to see which exception is thrown. I'll do a system.out.println and I will say number cannot be divided by 0. Simple message, right, inside my catch block. And I will do okay, let's just run it and see. So it came inside the catch block, right? And I got this message instead of, program giving me an error and getting executed in an unexpected manner. It gave me a simple output like it would have in any normal case, and it says number cannot be divided by 0. So try and catch block is a mechanism which could handle this divide by 0 situation and give me a meaningful error as to what I have done. I'm going wrong somewhere. Now, if I go ahead and make it 2, I will get my result as expected, right? So are we good with this example? Are we doing it in parallel?
But Deepti,
Yes.
here we knew that we are explicitly dividing it by 0 and we passed on the sysout message that number is divided by 0.
Yes.
So is there any other way through which we could know that yes, this was the reason?
Yes, there
That's
is.
why.
There is. What you can do is you have a print stack trace method on the exception object, right? What I'll do is, so it returns a void. So hence I'll just do that. I don't know what it's going to be like, and I don't know why exception occurred. I just want to see the print stack trace in this case. So I'll go ahead and make it 0 again so that the exception is thrown. I'll see what happens this time. See, this is how I'll get. So can you make out the difference?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So it is giving you the line also, which is giving me the error, right? So what a good practice is that you print the stack trace in each case so that you can really go down to the line which is causing the error, and maybe then additionally give a meaningful message from your end if you wish to, if your project demands that, right? Are we good with this? Are we able to execute and see the same thing? Right? Now I'll go ahead and take another example, just to give you a feel as to, because exceptions just by the theory can get very confusing. I can very well relate to that. Okay, I have a message on the chat window. Yes. Okay, it's a previous message. Okay, thank you. Okay, now here what I'll do is, how we can expect which exception will hit any predefined list. Okay, Naveen, yes, you can go through the list and the various exceptions and when they occur, you can refer to the text available on that. But like the most common ones are array index out of bounds, which I will cover in example. Another is null pointer, which I'm just showing it to you. So the more you work on exceptions, you try and get an idea as to which exception will be thrown, or you can refer to the exception hierarchy, or exactly which exception does what. Or simply for initial purposes, you can use directly the exception object itself here. So I can very well do exception object. I don't know which exception is going to be thrown. I just know that, there can be an unwanted event in this code. And that's why I'm putting inside this try block and I'll run it. Right? From its own, it will give that it is an arithmetic exception. So the more examples you do, the more code you write on exceptions, you get an idea, okay, this particular exception occurs when this situation comes. Got it? Like I'm going to cover, go ahead and do static. Okay. I'm going to have a string which is text and I'll give it a null value, right? What I'll do next is I will try and get int l is equal to text dot length. Now what I'm doing is my string is null, yet I'm trying to retrieve the length of that string. I know that this is going to give me a problem. What I'll do is I'll place a try block around. And I will say catch exception and maybe just dot print start trace for now. Right? It's already giving me a warning that you are trying to access a null pointer. So Eclipse will highlight it as a warning for you. But if you ignore the warning and you go ahead and execute this, you get a null pointer exception. It's saying that Java line 9 is trying to access a null value and it is trying to get the length on a null string. Yes? Are we able to follow the examples? I can also go ahead and say more meaningful message, string is null. So it gives me a okay, I had not commented it. Had I commented it, it would have just given string is null, that you are going to, what you're passing is a null value, right? So are we clear with these two examples? Please confirm, that will help. Okay, I guess people are trying out in parallel. I will wait for a few seconds here so that you can do this on your end. Okay, let's see our third example, which is again a very common thing you encounter when you work with arrays. So I'll go ahead and I'll declare an int array which has values like 9, 10, 11, 12, right? If we remember, array have a fixed size, right? And what I'll do is I'll say and I can see that the size is 4 here, but what I want to write is I want to write at the 10th index and I try and access R10 is equal to 67, right? And I will place this inside a try block. I will do an array out of bounds exception E sysout writing beyond the size of the array. Why it is giving me this exception here cannot be resolved to a type. What am I going wrong with the value? It is array index. Okay, this is small. Array index is what I'm missing. My bad. Okay. So it is giving me an array index bound of exception, and let's try and run this program. What I get here is you're writing beyond the size of the array, right? So that's why my sysout in this case will not happen, which I wanted to do will not happen, and it will give me an error, right? If I do a e dot print stack trace here and I comment this out, I get this exception. It gives me the line that there is a error index out of bounds exception at line number 10 because you are trying to read where you have accessed beyond the size of the array. So are we good with these three examples? This will just give you a flavor as to how we write exceptions in Java. Quick response, please. Okay, cool. So we go back to our presentation and we understand the keywords a bit more. So try, we saw that you place the code that throws exception inside this. A try block must be followed by either a catch or a finally. Yes, I think I said something else in the beginning, I realized. So either a catch or a finally will do, but not standalone try, right? You cannot use try block alone. Catch block is used to handle the exception. It must be preceded by try block and it cannot be used alone. So you cannot have a catch without a try. And it can be or cannot be, I mean, it can be followed by a finally block later. So finally is optional, right? Either of the two, catch or finally, would suffice. Finally block will always execute, right? Whether an exception is thrown or not. Now, two more keywords you see here is throw and throws. Now, what we are going to see now in the examples are these two keywords, how they are used. So throw is used to throw an exception and throws is used to declare an exception. When I know that this method is going to throw this particular exception, I go upfront and I declare it in the method signature itself, right? It doesn't, it will not throw an exception. It is always used in the method signature. Let's look at the difference between the two a bit more. So Java throw keyword is used to explicitly throw an exception, whereas Java throws keyword is used to declare an exception. Checked exception cannot be propagated, it's using throw only. So this we will see in the example and it will make more sense there, right? And throws is followed by class. Yes, as I said that in the method signature itself, you are declaring that this particular method will throw this exception. You cannot throw multiple exceptions using a throw clause, whereas you can declare multiple exceptions. That public void method throws IO exception, throws SQL exception. So comma separated, you can mention all the exceptions that your method can throw using a throws clause, right? let's see the syntax as to how it happens, and then we'll do our lab exercise. So I'll go ahead and I'll create a new class and I'll say throw example. And what I'll do here is that I will say that int num1 I will first declare a method which adds certain two numbers. Intentionally taking static to explain something about static methods. So, okay, this will take place later. I will write my main later. And it says that if num1 is greater than 900 or say greater than 100, for example, then I'm just intentionally using any condition to throw how we can explicitly throw an exception using the throw clause. So here I am using inside my if condition, I'm writing throw new arithmetic operation exception, and I say num1 is greater than 100. So my logic demands that if a number is greater than 100, you throw this exception, right? It will return else I will say that sysout number is permitted, maybe, right? So this is within my particular range that I want to say. And what I want to do is I'm adding, right? So I will use my return statement. I'll do a num1 plus num2. You return this to me at the end of this method. Now in my main, I'll go ahead and right now do a, I can use a scanner, but for now I'll just do int a is equal to, I take a number as 300 and I take a number as 3, right? So just to see that one value is more than 100. Now what will happen is the minute I will do int result is equal to, and I will call this method add a comma b, right? And I will do a sysout. The result or the sum is so here I have not put a try catch block, but I have thrown an exception explicitly inside this. That is, if this condition is encountered, then you throw an exception, right? And I have given my message also here that I will come to know. Now I am writing a static int method here, and that's why I did not have to declare, sorry, create an object of throw example is equal to no new throw example, right? Inside one static method, I'm able to call another static method directly within the same class. That's why I could straight away do add, given this was static, right? A bit on the static class methods. So when I run this, I get this. Num1 is greater than 100. It is throwing an arithmetic exception with this value. Got it? Now suppose my number was 30. Let's see what happens in this case. Number is permitted and you get the sum. So normal execution, right? Are we clear with throw? Before we see an example on throws. Any doubts? throw is used explicitly to throw exceptions from your code. Are we able to follow?
Deepti, can you please paste this code in the chat?
Sure, I'll do that. So for now, I have made it 30. Please make a change on your end to see if the exception occurs or not. Okay, or you can change the condition that number 1 is greater than 10, either of the two. So for demo purposes, we are intentionally taking input and conditions which will result in an exception so that we understand how throw works. Now we'll see how we use throws, right? I'll say throws example, yes, and creating separate classes so that when the content is shared, you can just pick up that particular class. And so here what I'll do is that I will have my method itself say, so I will do maybe this time I'll take divide maybe, yeah. Int divide, and I say int num1 comma int num2, right? And I give this as divide. I say here upfront that this method will throw an arithmetic exception, right? It will throw an arithmetic exception. Am I going wrong with the spelling here? Oh, okay. I'm doing that. Right? I will say int result is equal to num1 by num2 and return me a result, right? All right, so it got its return type, hence the error is gone. Now I will say you can use scanner also when you further explore this, but for now what I'll simply do is that I will call divide. I will call divide as int r is equal to, I call the divide method directly, given it is static again, and I pass the values as 30, 0. Right? Or maybe so that I can change it later, I give it as 30 and I will give this as 0. Better way of doing it. And I pass num1, num2, and I try and do a sys out and say division result is, and I will do a plus r, right? So I declare a method divide. I upfront say in the method signature itself that it will throw an arithmetic exception. I don't put a try catch block here, and let's see what happens. So division by 0 is the message the EVM is giving me. It is throwing an exception here, and that's why my division result is not getting printed. The minute I go ahead and make it 10 and I run it again, division result is 3, right? So this is how you can declare in your method signature. So throw and throws are different ways of doing the same thing. One is you put it inside the code that this particular method and explicitly write a throw statement here, or you declare it in your method. The advantage with throws is that I will be able to declare another exception here. If I wish to, I can say number format exception and it will accept it, right? So you can try out this example.